Karma may be of three sorts. A. Presently operative in this life through the appropriate instruments. B. That which is being made or stored up to be exhausted in the future. C. Karma held over from past life or lives and not operating yet because inhibited by inappropriateness of the instrument in use by the ego, or by the force of karma now operating. 23. Give me a hard one.
Just the last page?
No, that's not the last page.
It's only,
Sorry. Okay.
23.
Yep.
Three fields of operation are used in each being by karma. A. The body and the circumstances. B. The mind and intellect. C. The psychic and astral planes. 24. Held over karma or present karma may each or both at once operate in all of the three fields of karmic operation at once, or in either of those fields a different class of karma. From that, using the others may operate at the same time. 25th. Birth into any sort of body and to obtain the fruits of any sort of karma is due to preponderance of the line of karmic tendency. One more. 26. The sway of karmic tendency will influence the incarnation of an ego or any family of egos for 3 lives at least, where measures of repression, elimination, or counteraction are not adopted. Okay. Yeah, just one thing, if I may. When in Theosophy, when we see the term ego, it's not like the ego that we normally speak of. So ego means the reincarnating principle. Sometimes might be higher manas, or might have a relation to higher manas, or what we call individuality, which is in reality that reincarnating principle in humanity. That's why I said ego.
Oh, yeah.
I would say ego in way in Spanish.
You'd say that's like the soul aspect. That's your true soul. Your true soul.
It might be a really easy answer. I mean, hopefully. Is it easy to define what appropriateness and inappropriateness are here?
Which one?
22 essentially, but that's it.
Wasn't operating karma in the life through the appropriate instruments. Yeah, karma held over from past lives or lives not operating yet because inhibited by inappropriateness of the instrument in use. Well, yeah, it's
just us as instruments, us, our lower manas.
Well, it could be any. It could be your physical body. If you think about it, there's only a certain amount of karma. There's a particular type of physical karma you can get in a male body and a different type in a female body.
Sure.
The appropriateness of your mind is another aspect. So when it's talking about the appropriateness of an instrument, it's good to think about the different instruments that you have, because we don't think of it that way. We just think of it, well, this is my personality, my body, but you could be a single person and then a parent, and so the appropriateness of that vehicle, the mind, the psychic nature, and your emotional nature, and your physical body is going to change the karma that can come into it, because now you're linked to another being.
Yeah, it's really interesting how important it is then for him to say instrument, like how really integral that word is, because like what you're saying, it's a veiled word, other than being able to say, well, your body, your mind, it's instrument.
And your circumstances, you get put into different situations that either open up or shut off what you can do. Like even as the simple thing of you finish high school, if you go to study some more, you go to university, or you go directly into a job, the circumstances change, but also the instrument changes, because there's only, when you go into a job, now your mind is focused on whatever that particular job is. When you go and you pursue more education, that opens up your mind to a different avenue maybe, but it's not better or worse. It's not because you're getting more education, now you're a better vehicle. You are in a very particular aspect of the problem. And if we think that we have, eons of experience in generating karma, only certain things can come out. That's why I think it's good to think about it. It sounds very basic, but like the appropriateness of the instrument, or when it talks about the field of operation could be your body and your mind, but it also could be the circumstances that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
If all of a sudden, you're in a natural disaster, now the circumstances of your life are going to bring in a whole karmic array of things that will happen, good or bad, and how you react to them.
It's again a really, really important choice of words, field of operation.
And the next one too, because they're kind of different aspects from the first one, because see the 23rd, these circumstances you may say, or the three fields, that's the body and the circumstances, as you was mentioned. Then it could be the mind or intellect. I mean, look at the differences of minds and intellects in this world. How some get educated, some doesn't get educated, and whatever you were born are different thinking. It's very, like black and white from one country to another one. So it could be mind, the karmic aspect reincarnating in a vehicle with different aspects of mind and thinking. You are a very religious person, and you're gonna die a very religious person. That's, maybe your karma. And so in your mind or the intellect, you are set that you're gonna live your life like that. Or the psychic and astral planes. There's a lot of people that have this kind of karmic, may say, lives where they have certain psychic developed, although maybe not, like the one we mentioned here, but they're still psychic. They can see things, feel things because of their past lives, whatever they did right or wrong or accomplished. And it doesn't, like it was mentioned, it's not better or worse. It's not more important or less important. It just, I guess it's telling us different aspects how karma works. And it's, besides this, how many other ways we can think about.
I always but wonder about when we get to the psychic and the astral, just because if we were to investigate that further and like ask about if anybody has had some experiences or experience with that, is that getting a little, it doesn't seem that focused on phenomena to me, unless we're just wallowing in the stories without the methods and the instruments being, it doesn't seem like we tackle that a lot. We talk about what actually is using the instruments appropriateness in a psychic or astral way, even as a theosophist. How would we maybe go about that? Is it something that we need to wait for, be actually, initiated for that kind of experience, or?
Well, you have to think about what psychic means. A lot of times we associate psychic with only someone like you go to a fortune teller.
Yeah.
And they're going to be able to tell you a certain aspect of your life because they can read your own experiences, however accurate or not accurate. But another aspect of psychic is anything you think about, how you do and how you feel.
Right.
So that's the psychic nature is really, there's lower levels of psychic that the most brilliant scientist is using his psychic abilities. Now, if in his research and in his studies and he's pondering, trying to solve a problem, whatever that is, and insights start to come to him or her, then it's their discernment that can determine or try to determine, okay, I'm getting an answer for this problem. Is this answer coming from all the studying I've done for my whole life? And now my mind has just sifted through all the pieces and presented it to me the same way as I can't remember someone's name.
Sure.
And all of a sudden it comes to me. I know her, I recognize her. I have a whole experience of her attending certain aspects. My mind hasn't seen her in a long time. All of a sudden my mind starts saying, oh yeah, what's her name?
Sure.
Sometimes you're trying to remember something and you just like, oh, I'll forget about it. I'll come to it. And then it comes to you. That's your psychic nature working in doing it on this plane. But then there's also the aspect of psychic that anyone that's doing research as a scientist, all that thinking is really in a universal mind plane, even though it's a lower level of mind. So maybe my mind is tapping into that because that's what I'm thinking about, not knowing the person that is thinking that. And we have those kind of experiences.
Yeah.
You're thinking about a friend you haven't seen in a long time, and all of a sudden they call you out of the blue. You think, oh wow, I was just thinking about you. So we know that there's aspects of psychic ability that we have. Then the question is to be, how do we develop it and fine tune it so it's not a bad observation? And that's really the hard part, but it's doable. Just like some people, when they pay attention to their dreams and really try and focus on getting an understanding of their dreams, then they can see like, oh yeah, that's just all jumbles up of my past week. And then this is completely different. I'm going to try and look at that because maybe that's my higher nature trying to present something to me.
Sure.
Like that only happens if you pay attention to it.
And in this context too, it can also, from what you started at the start, it can also just mean like remind us that thoughts matter. That part of our karmic experience and part of how developing karma and stuff is of just not just our actions, but our thoughts definitely have a psychic plane. You can't just go around cursing everybody all day in your head and then give something to charity once a week and be like, yeah, karma. It's probably, and that's something that is, a lot more taught, I think, in Eastern traditions and stuff like that, instead of a lot of Western traditions. It's just like, who cares what you think? Right. Just don't do that. Yeah.
But also I think like Theosophy, when you were like going through some of the paramitas, the spiritual ethics, Theosophy, I think, is teaching us to focus on that like purification of ourselves and
right
focus,
thought,
right thought, and that. So, and then, the psychic abilities will develop naturally, but to rather focus on, purifying, because it was interesting. I read this one book where a woman went out with the Aborigines and did like a whole walk. And they had, the Aborigines had abilities to mentally, like telepathically,
Did they have like a belief in the dreaming kind of?
Yeah.
Way before. Yeah.
But one of the things they mentioned to the woman that was walking with them and said, well, we have this ability to telepathically, know each other's thoughts because we're pure of heart. We don't have anything to hide. We're not judging each other. We're not thinking ill thoughts of each other. So we have this purity of mind that we're able to do that.
Clear transmission, yeah.
Yeah, whereas, the rest, many other people don't because they're thinking of cheating someone or taking
Oh, yeah.
advantage.
I look at someone in my community and there's a million things attached to just seeing them and be, oh, who can I trust?
So, yeah, that's kind of what, focuses on that purification.
That's a good point.
In the voice of the silence, they're called cities. And they're called, psychic abilities or powers. And in humanity, we have the dual nature. The higher nature, which is spiritual nature, and the lower nature. And I think motive defines everything. What is the motive for whatever experiencing or studying or developing. So we have this lower nature which has to do with personal motives, gaining, being better than everybody else or things like that. But then the voice of the silence describes through the paramitas this higher nature that these psychic powers, spiritual powers, we may call them now, they can also be developed. But it has to do through certain service to humanity. And in a way, forgetting about, to a point, you're getting things for your own benefit. And so that would be that psychic actual aspect in ourselves, because that is part of the sevenfold nature of humanity. It's the second, principle from, down up, the physical, the astral body. Then we have prana, the energy. We have kama, desire, and all of these nature is involved with motive, and with psychic. Then we have mind. Then we have spiritual soul, the spirit. So all of this is involved into the motive of intention for these psychic powers or in the astral world. So the voice of the silence, and you know what? Let me just read this part. It's very, very short. You've seen it before. It's at the beginning. This is where it begins. And by the way, this is it says voice of the silence. It's a book of the other precepts for the daily use of Lanús disciples. And it begins, the very first thing, it says, these instructions are for those ignorant of the dangers of the lower eating, which you were referring to in a way. And then the eating, this is a Pali word, it's a synonym of the Sanskrit siddhi, or psychic faculties. The abnormal powers in men. Abnormal, for now we may say. There are two kinds of siddhis. The other one is that the group embraces, one embraces the lower that I was talking about, the lower, of course, psychic and mental energies. The other is one which exacts the highest training of spiritual powers. So again, motive, intention has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, and some of the like Upanishads and stuff, the CDs get pretty amazing details and stuff.
They have these beings called siddhas, Mahasiddhas and siddhas. They are adepts because they possess the power.
Well, you made an interesting comment where you said, a lot of people only think actions are what count, but thoughts are really what really counts. And the reason why is because even though you don't act on a thought, that thought then permeates through the astral plane.
Right.
And that might induce someone else to do that action. And that's the thing that people don't think about. It's like, well, I didn't do it. Yeah, but if you don't act on it and 10 other people do, the karma to you is more than the karma to them.
Yeah.
Because they're acting basically out of ignorance. You're acting out of carelessness.
It's also like, I think it's combined to what, it's also involved when people talk about that someone has bad vibes because they're negative and stuff. There's a lot of that negativity is empowering these elementals, these vibes, they're just floating around somebody. We've all experienced it. It's a little unexplainable, or super good vibes that we can't really explain. It's the same process there, thinking good stuff, right thoughts.
Or why, like when you're around a baby, an infant,
Sure.
do you feel?
You'll get bad vibes.
Right.
Doesn't usually happen, yeah. That's a good point, yeah.
You know,
It's just, you don't even have to be that big of a fan of babies, but you get around one and you're just like, okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
in the plane of thought, we might be participating in a lot of things, as it was mentioned. We might not be acting upon it, but a vehicle is always found for something that you also participate in mentally. So you're part of,
You might be part of some big movement that you have.
a greater part of the problem. Somebody's executing, the crime or whatever the act, but you participate mentally.
It's just like essentially jumping on a bandwagon on like social media before you've looked into it and like studied it. It's like now you're part of something that you don't really understand. And yet, it's great.
Yeah, I think this is why meditation is so important, so you can try to stop thinking, or even if you can't stop thinking, at least chant something in your head. So you can keep that in your head rather than,
Or sometimes at the very least, just look at your thinking. Sometimes
Yeah.
just stepping back and watching it and being like, oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
it begins with that.
That's the thing.
But if you get really good, you can stop it,
Yeah.
stop thinking, that way, because time is gonna pass. I mean, I know time is an illusion, but it's gonna pass. If time can pass and you're not thinking anything, that's positive, you know what I mean? Because there's too many thoughts already floating around. But if you can't do that, then chant in your head.
Sure.
At least that
One
won't be.
pointed focus.
Yeah.
One pointed focus, yeah.
Yeah,
A lot of meditations, they always use that word, the single pointed focus, because it's like, it's not complete, like no thought, but it's like pretty close to one thing.
Yes.
Instead of what I'm usually going is a million.
James, you remind me of William Q. Judge. I don't recall which is the article, but that question is placed about, my thoughts. And then he says, well, we are the thinking principle. And so he says, the best you can do is concentrate on your highest ideal. And that would be good enough for now.
Yeah. So they'll tell you to focus on charity, focus on,
Right. Yeah.
that's great.
Well, the other thing about, you said stopping your thoughts, that's part of the one of the aphorisms in the voice of the silence and Patanjali, because the natural tendency of your lower mind is to observe and classify and think about thoughts and feelings and grasp. If you can quiet that, it's still going to want to do that.
yeah,
But if you can keep it quiet, then the higher ego can then start passing thoughts to that.
yes,
But you can't reflect it or remember it until you can get to that stage of quieting the normal everyday chatter that your mind has.
yes.
And the thing is, you have to, it's not like it happens all of a sudden. You have to develop some sort of method or practice to get your mind to that state so that it can do what it naturally can do. We're just so used to absorbing on this, wherever we go on this in public today, someone can't just sit there and be by themselves. If they're on a bus, they're on their phone. If they're in a restaurant, they're on their phone and they're scrolling through pages, because there's a natural tendency that the mind says, I want information, I want to observe, I want to see, I got to know. If we can quiet that, then this higher ego, our own soul, can then try to communicate with their personal mind. But that's like when Roberto was talking about the higher and lower cities. The higher cities are being able to know and observe those higher thoughts that adepts and other beings have, that we are kind of blocked out from because our constant thinking.
Mm.
You know, so that's, yeah, it's any school of meditation, that's really the process, whether they're telling you that or not.
Yeah.
You're not just, I mean, you can meditate to calm yourself down and try to relax. That's a byproduct of it. But it should be like your true focus is trying to like know what your true nature is, and then you'll slowly get insights.
Yeah. My first empowerment, we saw when saw a monk's folk speak that he's one of those guys that he's not really the scholarly path. He was this meditating in seclusion for 7 years type path. And it was, he would give these, just because of his life experience, you could tell his answers were always unexpected and like beautiful. So I couldn't like do justice to his words. But one of the things that he said was the greatest advantage of his life was I guess like vidya, or like almost pristine awareness, or coming close. And he described how different it is to see even like a flower or a bee with that kind of awareness. And the way he described it was awesome and poetic, but it was just like that. It was like you can see things for everything for what it is, like, and it's great. It just he really made me want to reach that. But yeah.
Well, it seems like, yeah, you see a bigger picture of everything. You see the connectedness and how, the cause of one thing affects another, how this cause and effect works, and, how karma
Mhm.
play out.
You
And
actually like see the equations, like
Right.
everything tied. And I mean, that's why it's really tricky for people. I mean, think of how easy the concept of universal brotherhood would be with even like a moment of that kind of awareness. You'd be like, oh yeah, there, we're already there. You just have to, access it. Where were we?
27. All right, Roberto?
Yeah.
Want to read? Hello?
sure. Well, I actually had a question about like the number 26. This way the karmic tendency will influence the incarnation of an ego or any family of egos for 3 lives at least, when measures of repression, elimination, or counteraction are not adopted. So does that mean that it takes like so I guess it says at least. So it could take longer for the karma to kind of come up or
Or work out.
Yeah. For 3 lives. It's interesting.
So like 300 years?
No, like three,
Life is about 100 years, right?
yeah.
Yeah, but
But
then
then-
you don't come right back after you die.
That's
So,
the thing too, is are you gone for like 1,500 years?
well, it all depends on karmically that's the other thing. She gives like a ballpark average, but we know that isn't accurate, because she also says people who have no spiritual inclination at all incarnate almost instantly.
Quicker, yeah.
And also, adepts don't have to incarnate, but can incarnate when needed, and anything in between that,
Yeah, it's a big
So-
range.
it's a big range. And it also would be dependent on other beings that are not incarnated that you have to synchronistically come together with to work out karma.
Yeah.
So that's
Or
kind of an interesting way that he puts it without any more explanation, because you think 3 lives. Okay, well, if I have to, let's say you're in your family, you have to come back just with your parents and your brothers and sisters if there were. So, your parents die usually a little bit before you, maybe a long time before you, and then you might have a brother or sister. So what is it? Next 100 years, you all come back together? That's, or, 1,500 years, you come back together. That's why she doesn't really give many year-wise information, because
It's hard to pinpoint.
It's hard to pinpoint, and it's all depends on the interlacing of karma of the people
And the
And-
circumstance.
and the circumstance and how civilization progresses or decresses.
And this makes me think of how beneficial it is to be a monk, because you're spending a lot of time doing nothing most of the day. So at least,
It depends on the kind of monk. Not do a lot.
A lot of, yeah.
well, but compared to what we have to
Sure,
deal with,
mentally, like,
You know,
thinking wise.
and then you're entangled with others who
Sure.
are similar to what you're doing, sort of less than what we have to do over here.
Yeah,
So you're taking a whole lot of this extra crap out. And so when you get reincarnated, it's probably a lot less to deal with.
But you can't treat it as an escape, though. You
Well-
can't just be a monk to escape all
Well,
that.
yeah.
I mean, you can, but you hit a ceiling eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing
You
is,
won't get all that's supposed to be given.
the other thing is, it might seem that way from our perspective. But because you don't have a lot of immediate personalities other than, the other monks you're with, but you're operating on a higher plane of consciousness. So in effect, you're connected to a lot more people. Whether they know you or not, or you know them, you're operating from, instead of a family group karma, to more like, maybe like a cycle group karma.
Absolutely.
So you could be connected to people in countries that you don't even know because of the mental plane that you operate on a long daily time scale. You're meditating for, say, 6 hours, and 4 of those hours, you're on the plane of humanity's mental state.
That's interesting.
Then, karmically, you could be brought into any situation, or you might be equalizing the karma in very small bits
Yeah.
of a lot of people, because you're trying to keep, in a certain sense, you're trying to keep the water pure.
Yeah.
So the mental water, where the rest of us are, no one's gonna see, I'm just gonna pee in the water today. So,
What about,
no one really knows, but the monk's like, oh, great. Now I gotta do some extra cleaning.
Yeah, I think one concept that really supports that is there's a lot of stories of monasteries that got sacked or destroyed when communists came and stuff, that the members went away and literally kept a mantra up that they'd been already doing for 20 years and kept it up in seclusion the entire time until they came back, purely on the belief that this mantra is important for this community's karma. This isn't, we're not doing this for us. And it was important to many of them. They lost their lives to it and stuff like that. And it's they really did, firmly believe that it's if we stop this, it'll get worse. Yeah.
I got one more. Sorry.
Going back to James, I think in both, because in times of duration, judge uses general average is 1,500 years. Individually, is something different, like Colin says. It's totally different thing, because individually is proportional to how you live your life.
Yeah.
And therefore, he said that in the Egyptian times, it was 3,000 years before you come back. Generally speaking. Now they use 750 or 1,500 years. Again, that's generally speaking. But now individually, again, go back to how are we living our lives. We might come back our way. We might take a million years, who knows? So it depends on the individual on how long it will take to return. So let's say if it's gonna take 3 lives, it's gonna be 3 or 5, 4,000 years.
Yeah.
But again, if you're a good person, it might be less.
Yeah, if you have less to work out in
Yeah.
group, then maybe.
And I was thinking the guys who by themselves go into a cave and they live in a cave, the aesthetic, right? They'll be in there forever, for 50 years.
Yeah.
So that's sort of an example of doing nothing. But like you said, though, he might be on that other plane. But still, I think he has less things he's attached to.
Yeah.
So it's less to deal with.
Yeah, that's true.
So imagine you can do that in a city like this.
Oh, I don't think that's possible.
What's his name did it?
It's possible.
The guy the philosopher that lived in the jar in Athens, he did it. Lived right downtown.
Oh, in the tub?
Yeah, the guy that created
What?
I know who you're talking about.
ethical hedonism. Now, he's a famous philosopher that just his whole thing was he had a giant jar in the middle of Athens and he lived in it. To show how little you need, and he pick out his hedonism. But again, he did it for years and years and years.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Well, there guys that believe, if you can do that, of course, it might be easier for us going away. But if in the family that you were born,
Yeah.
in the city that you were born, in the country that you were born, that's the idea that we can work that out and then just be a monk, retirement. You can retire in your mind and just, because it is, I'm not.
Way harder than putting a diaper on and going to a cave.
Sometimes some of those aesthetics become insanely productive though. Like what Miyamoto Musashi, when he finally went into the cave is when he stopped dueling and wrote like the Book of Five Rings and invented all this amazing calligraphy and stuff.
That's true too.
Like you said, that some people might just retire, and while you retire and you're away from the city, you might be living just your personal fantasies too. You never know. But anyway, it's.
No, I hear what you're saying.
I mean, I guess, probably Jesus did it too.
I just feel like
that.
in a city, like there's so many things. Just walking down the street, you interact with all these things, and it's like action, right? Action is what produces karma, right? Action. So just one step in a city, I think, is so much action. You're getting entangled in everything. I mean, you're gonna run across people left and right. They're gonna come toward you. Cats, dogs,
But in
birds.
the same way, like what better place to have the most effect on like community karma and stuff too? I mean, in a way, like if maybe our karma isn't to go be alone and purify ourselves, maybe our karma is to like even before that, be in it with our family and everything.
Well, that's just that one that we read. Birth into any sort of body to obtain the fruits of any sort of karma is due to the preponderance of the line of karmic tendency for 25.
That
And
makes
so
sense.
but because you're born into a particular family or place, doesn't mean that's where you have to stay. As we know, so many of us have come from somewhere else to be here.
So many Theosophists here.
So your karmic tendency could be during a particular time, and you're brought into a particular family for a certain amount of karma, and then you go to a different place or a different family or a different group, and that starts another level of karma. It's all intertwined, but we see it when we look at individuals ourselves and we look at other people. You see how many different levels karma can work through, and how where you're in a different situation, your attitude can change, your mind can change for the better or for the worst. But at the end, it still boils down to what you think about and how you think.
And I think that there's the opportunity to, work out and help the karma of your family, of your nation. We can see these as instead of like all these distractions or getting attached, the opportunity to work out the karma, with all the individuals that we're connected with and kind of help them, as well. It's kind of just made me think of like, there's so much focused on going to Mars, like all this energy and intelligence going to Mars. Why aren't we focused on helping the issues here? So why we can focus on helping the issues with our immediate, connections.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too, because like any kind of reputable like futurist or people that think about like intergalactic, like the future of that, there's no way for humanity to be an actual spacefaring species unless we can figure stuff out here. Like there's no what are we gonna do? if we, like, half the planet's homeless and we're like colonizing space?
No, that's not gonna happen, yeah. We gotta deal with stuff here first.
Like, I mean, Gandhi was really important too. One of the things Gandhi said, Gandhi is like, no society is going to be able to reach a certain point of evolution until they stop depending on the cruelty of other living beings. Meaning, like, you know, vegetarian stuff. I always use vegetarian quote. It makes a lot of sense. It's like we're depending on, like, you know, like meat
Yeah.
from other animals, and we think we're going like outside the solar system.
No.
I don't know.
Maybe some probes, but
Yeah. But we wouldn't have the meat. We wouldn't have the meat supplies to get outside the solar system.
And for me, 25th and 26th is the basis for the incarnation. Those tendencies can create a new, the ego to go into the new incarnation. And because when I read the Bhagavad Gita, after you die, a bunch of people is materialization for your new incarnation. But this will work with the tendency that you have in the last incarnation. And then the new body has to go to the tendency that is into the family. And this work, the tendency of your father, the tendency of your mother, and then your own tendencies. Is create a new incarnation.
skandhas, is it the skandha?
Standards.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is the basis for the the 25th and 26th is talking about this.
No, I think that's important. Thanks for reminding the skandhas, those important to make. So tendency essentially when we speak of skandhas, is that's it, same kind of thing, or is skandhas involve even more? Like,
Well,
a fault is a tendency, I guess, right? Or
Yeah.
thinking errors, yeah.
Skandhas, you can, for me, the best way to think about them is their lives that carry information. And we program them. So you have emotional tendencies. There's a substance in nature that we don't see that is alive and intelligent that we impress with the way we think.
It's like AI, it's like a bot or something.
Well, it's just like how we think of a bot as a program, but the program you have to write, and then it's embedded on some kind of material. So the skandhas are a type of material, but it's living. It's not silicon. It's a living, intelligent material. And when you program it by your thoughts, they carry that information until they get reprogrammed with different thoughts. And that's the thing, we're thinking all the time. So if you think a lot about a certain thing, you create habit. If you continue that habit, you create a life and a characteristic that becomes very hard to change in your nature.
Yeah.
And if you continue that through your life, as he pointed out, you're going to come back with those characteristics and tendencies.
And incarnate
In some future body with that mental attitude. But we tend to think a lot of times that they're negative, but they're not negative or positive. They're either or both. So someone has a job, they go to school, they become accountant, they work as an accountant their whole life, very practical kind of person. They had maybe I'll take a painting class or something, maybe not. I kind of would like to paint. They never do. They retire and they say, you know what, I'm going to go take a painting class at the community college or at the senior center. So they go and they take a painting class, and it turns out with very little guidance, they're a pretty good painter. Where did that come from? Did it come from that one art teacher at the senior center or the community college.
Mm.
No, they came with that ability. Or someone is, you know, in a particular life, they're a really good musician. You don't remember you're a musician. Next time you're incarnated, you become a medical student, you become a doctor, and all of a sudden you're really good doing surgeries. It's hard to become a really good surgeon right off the top.
Right.
It's one thing to learn and know that, okay, this does this, and when there's this problem, I cut you open, I stitch you back together. How many people have sewed their ripped clothes? Not so easy. Now you're sewing up someone that's alive, and you got to do a good job. Some people are really good at it. Some people learn to be good at it, but someone might have that dexterity that they've trained, and it's brought back. It's just they're not a musician this time. Now they're a surgeon. So when we talk about these ideas, I think it's good to really think, how does it really play out in life? Because that's what it does. It's playing out in our daily lives, what we like, what we don't like, why we're attracted to certain ideas, why other ideas just don't resonate with us. You know, you like certain kind of films, you don't like other kind of films. All that stuff is how we think and feel, and we're creating that environment, and it's a living environment.
What that really reminds me of is, it's probably a combination of like my phone's algorithm and actual news, but like I am constantly seeing stories about science and investigating the new novel idea of the universe being a conscious living thing. And all over, just constant news, science headlines I see, and it's interesting because I won't even brag about Theosophy. I mean, the Dantons have been talking about that for how many thousands of years now? Like, and it's one of those things too, that for a lot of people, it takes science to talk about it for them to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But without science saying that, it's like, really? You mean it's like talk and stuff? You know?
Yeah.
Why not?
But like our society in particular is very focused on mechanical. And even though, you know, now everyone's talking about, you know, intelligent programs, it's mechanical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not doing what the Vedantins and the Tibetans did, is to harnessing their own abilities of soul and mind to function. We create mechanical gadgets to do what we think would be cool, when our mind is still so much more powerful. We just have to know how to use it. So, you know, some people that are creative, they can't even explain why they're creative. The ideas just come to them. And then they figure out how to make a movie, write a very interesting story, as opposed to a story that you've seen, you know, 100 times. It's just different names, different characters in a different place.
Yeah.
There's this guy and a girl, they get interested, then they go to this place, then there's this other person, then there's this, you know, axe wielder.
Yeah.
All these crazy stories. Okay, now we're going to switch it around. But then someone comes out with a story that's a little bit similar, but it's way different. And that's why it resonates with people, because it's like, wow, that's kind of cool. I never thought about things that way. Or it's interesting perspective of how they see it, because we can relate to it a little bit different than the normal, you know, James Bond movie. You know what's going to happen. It's just different places. Or that action movie.
Yeah, I can't remember the actual, but in literature and stuff, where they say there's only like 5 stories or something that are just retold and retold and retold. I mean, just the basis of like the 3 acts is almost instilled in everything.
Yeah.
Climax, ending.
That's why Shakespeare was special, because he had 5 acts.
Yeah.
And sometimes,
And a million useless periphery characters.
sometimes you just need to give some push to somebody, you know. I remember a guy who was a homeless who lives across the street where I live. And I was talking to him one of those days, and I say, he was telling me, you know, I am a homeless. I said, you are not homeless. You live in the street, but you are not homeless. don't put this idea in your brain.
Mm.
And I start talking to him and talking to him. Right now, he's a manager in Las Vegas.
Nice.
He comes once in a while. He says, Luis, thank you for giving me this key. Thank you for enlightenment.
Not letting me identify with it, yeah.
I says, you are not homeless. And when I talk to people in the street or people in the program,
Right.
you know, I told them, you are using drugs, you are using alcohol, but you are not alcoholic.
Yeah.
You are not drug addict.
It's really
You're a
important.
human being.
That's why it's really important to like say, I'm not depressed, I'm feeling depressed, or to say people are depressed. They're not depressed. That's not their identity.
But I learned that here. Before I came here, I didn't know that.
Well, that's the thing. It takes a lot for someone to put that into practice. But first they have to have the idea that that's a different way of looking at your situation. He had to still take action to get off the street. But you put it into perspective that he's a person living on the street. He's not a homeless person. And that's just a different way of looking at
It's
something.
just,
That when in your own mind, we all have a tendency to think how we think. And then think about the things that we think about. And it gets to be just like a loop of a record or a tape that's going around and around. And it takes, and you might have told 50 people that, and only one person did something, or they all might have done something. But that's the thing, that we don't know how little it is that we can change someone with just something like that of an idea to really help them.
You just put the seed in.
Just a seed, yeah. We've all had people in our lives that somehow, maybe we didn't even realize it at the beginning when it happened, that they changed the course of what we were doing. Maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was a family member or a friend, or going to visit going on a vacation, you meet someone, and it changes your perspective about life. And then that takes you on a different trajectory, that if you hadn't made that connection, you would be you wouldn't be in the place that you're at now. So yeah, it's pretty amazing when you look at how subtle a karmic influence can really change an outcome.
oh yeah, I mean, literally a compliment from a stranger can change my day. Like, it's that, you know, I never know what it'll take, but yeah. Sometimes we get so stuck in our own perspective that something as simple as being, like, you know, your being isn't homeless. That's not the core of your being. You're just, you know, going through that and realizing that it's not forever is important. Like, when I get sick, I get into woe is me, and I feel like I'm gonna feel like this forever, you know, and it's just like, you're gonna be fine, it's just a perspective kind of thing. That's why sometimes it's nice a lot of people need the professional kind of opinion, even if they just have a cold or something, go to the doctor, and just him telling you, it's just a cold, go home, is plenty for a lot of people to heal, you know.
We read the next group?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, 27, measures taken by an ego to repress tendency, eliminate defects, and to counteract by setting up different causes will alter the sway of karmic tendency and shorten its influence in accordance with the strength or weakness of the efforts extended in carrying out the measure adopted. 28. No man but a sage or a true seer can judge another's karma. Hence, while each receives his deserts, appearances may deceive, and birth into poverty or heavy trial may not be punishment for bad karma. For egos continually incarnate into poor surroundings where they experience difficulties and trials, which are for the discipline of the ego and result in strength, fortitude, and sympathy. 28. Race karma influences each unit in the race through the law of distribution. National karma operates on the members of the nation by the same law, more concentrated. Family karma governs only with a nation where families have been kept pure and distinct. For in any nation where there is a mixture of family as obtains in each Kali Yuga period, family karma is in general distributed over a nation. But even at such periods, some families remain coherent for long periods, and then the members feel the sway of family karma. The word family may include several smaller families.
So family can mean like tribe.
Yes, that would be good, yeah.
Nations.
Should I keep going or
I have
should
a
we?
question.
Those are longer
Oh.
ones.
On 28, so the first thing that came to my mind is, this is just my question. So like, regardless of if you're experiencing rough times for the benefit of your own discipline and strength, or if you just got really bad karma and life sucks, isn't it kind of always better to look at it as, because you can't really tell anyway if you're in the middle of that. So isn't it, in both cases, wouldn't it be advantageous to think of it as something to make you stronger and more disciplined than to just be like, well, this is what I got? It seems like it's just like, well, always look at it as a, not a test, but a forge, a tempering forge or whatever. I wouldn't see the benefit of being able to just be like, I have bad karma and that's the way it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but some people, are in situations, like I've known some people that had like ALS, and
Yeah.
they're in a horrible.
You wouldn't really want to tell them that this is a challenge to make you stronger.
So, how do you deal with that, or how do you, I mean, it's a hard situation, or.
Yeah, a lot of like religious clerics and bishops have gone very wrong by, telling a gay kid that this is a challenge in his life, not,
Had to express.
Yeah.
It's against God's will.
Yeah, that like, oh, it might be natural, but it's a test. Seems kind of fair test.
Well, earlier, we were talking about these the cities, or the psychic powers. We might say the higher and the lower. So this 28, I really always like this one because at least it makes you think in a different way. But well, to begin with, when we study this, then you get to a point where there is a personality that judges, oh, he has a bad karma. Oh, he has a great karma. So I really like the better karma than the other one. You see, that's a personality judging. If we were able to judge from a different perspective, then we wouldn't say this is better than that. It would be just karma. That's the tendency that they were talking about. That's something that has to unfold, that you need to work on that tendency. But you wouldn't say, oh, this is bad, or this is good, or this is sad, or this is very happy. And this one, actually, 28, and I'm gonna read it again. Well, what he says, appearances may deceive. Any birth into poverty of heavy trial may not be punishment for bad karma, as I would think, punishment or reward. For egos, us, individualities, continually incarnate into poor surroundings where they experience difficulties and trials which are for the discipline of the ego. So there's certain discipline there that I guess this part of the ego needs to experience and result in strength, fortitude, and sympathy. It still seems like more from the personal perspective that we would expect something in this sense. But the idea is that if we, through a study and experience, we come to realize that even if I judge my karma as really terrible karma, but then I get the strength to face it. And I can be a very happy person, instead of being angry or because everything that is happening to me, I can have a different face to the events and be happy. Well, this is my karma. Or maybe it's just a new experience. Like you said, we don't know if it's one or the other. But then I learn to accept. And like Crosby says, live the life, you become very receptive to accept everything that is presenting in your life, in every second of your life, with your family, with your friends. But if you feel that negative part of it, well, you have the power to change that. Don't feel this way. This is not really me, like you were saying, this is just something that I'm experiencing because I'm not this situation. I'm not even the karma, although I'm part of the karma, but I'm above that. But of course, this is easier said.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done. But that's the idea. Like Colin said, once we have the idea, we can face things in a different perspective. That's one point of view.
No, it's true.
This makes me think of something called tapas. Is anybody familiar with tapas?
The food?
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
TAPAS. It's a variety of austere spiritual meditation practices in Indian religions. Also in Jainism, it means asceticism. And in Buddhism, it denotes spiritual practices, including meditation, self-discipline, and in the different traditions within Hinduism, it means a spectrum of practices ranging from asceticism, inner cleansing, and self-discipline. So, like, if you're, if it's not your karma, but you're born into poverty and stuff like that, it's sort of like that. It's sort of like tapas. You're sort of engaging in type of asceticism or discipline.
I mean, you
can see it like
what an
that.
amazing ability if you could recognize that.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
That's just.
That may almost be like you realize that you're a reincarnation of someone before the monks come and find you. Like, they come and start showing you your old stuff, and you're like, yeah, I know. Where were you guys?
It is said that in the plane of the ego, which is omniscience, we may use that word. You can see, not you as a personality, but your life that is about to come, you are able to see that. So from that perspective, you're okay with it. But once you take a body, then you forget all that. And that's why we react the way we react.
I was going to ask something along the same line. So are you saying, this is something I've never had clarified. So are you saying you retain your past memories through Kali Yuga until the moment of reincarnation?
So what he's
They're
saying
pulled
is,
away from you in Kali Yuga, right?
what he's saying is when you
Become
when you die as a personality, you get what's called a death vision, where you kind of recapitulate everything that you've lived through and can see the connectedness, like where you made the mistakes, how it affected other people. When you're in Devachan, you're experiencing all the higher aspirations and good deeds of that last life. That's kind of the fruit, your spiritual fruit.
Yeah.
When that kind of personal movie ends and you're coming into a new life, you get a glimpse of what that new life is and why. And then you incarnate into a baby, and then you start living that life. So that's the 2 times in life where you kind of
Get a peek.
you get a peek. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's said that going along with karma, since we go into and out of carnation with different other souls, sometimes we might be in Devachan and people that we need to incarnate with are being born. We can be given the option by the adepts that aren't in Devachan because they passed that to see if we want to go back and continue whatever our karmic path was. Or we stay in David Karma, we wait for a different cycle and come in with other people. But as times kind of line up, it's like you're gonna go visit your family in New York. So you can take the 5 o'clock plane or you can take the red eye. You wanna wait before you leave, or you're gonna go now and start the trip early? And kind of a crude analogy. So that's when it said that, you know, we can limit our data con experience by choice under certain circumstances.
But
That's like-
calling this choice is not for everybody, it's just for those egos that evolve in some way.
Yeah. It's not for everybody. It
It's not.
depends on, once again, it's a karmic thing that you set up. If your desire is to help humanity, just like you talked about the monk, you know, the monks incarnate pretty quickly. They don't wait 1,500 years because they're keeping their glasses and their books and,
There's a mission.
you know, there's stuff there. So there's a certain, it would seem there's a certain time out of incarnation that even an adept takes for whatever reasons. And then, you know, comes back sooner than most. But it said that, you know, we can set that opportunity up if that's our desire. It doesn't mean it's going to happen,
Yeah.
but we set up the opportunity and then, yeah.
It's a big chance to realize this desire,
Yeah.
because your inclination is pure and spiritual and, you know,
And you're coming back with a certain group of people to do a certain thing. You know, there was a movie, I forget what the movie was. It was about World War II. Oh, it was about Patton, General Patton. And what his spiritual beliefs were, or what, I don't know. But he was in Europe during the war, and he remembered being there before.
Yeah,
It was like-
reincarnation, I think.
Yeah,
Oh, I think he was the one that's, yeah, I think he said like every generation had been in a war or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
and his thing, he said, I had to come back here because I was on a battle here before.
Wow.
And
It's a
so,
weird thing for him to say.
very weird, but
Back then.
yeah, you think about what, you know, if someone comes back as needed as a general and is in the, you know, so who knows, you know? But it was a very unusual thing for someone,
Yeah.
any military person to say. Ridiculous.
He was a rowdy guy, man. He was serious. He was
Yeah.
shooting at planes with handguns.
Yeah,
You did?
yeah.
Was it Patton or when the Japanese surrendered to formally?
I don't know.
I think it was
they say
MacArthur.
MacArthur. I think it was MacArthur.
they say that,
Yeah, it was
that
MacArthur.
he has a chance to capture Hitler, but he didn't say no because he was Mason.
Mhm.
He says no because they belong to the same
Johnny.
chapter.
Well, I didn't know that.
This is what they say.
I mean, back then, it's likely. I mean, yeah, that the whole Garibaldi and his red shirts wouldn't join Abraham Lincoln because Abraham Lincoln wasn't hard enough on slavery. Like, I mean, that was, and it supposedly it was ties to his ancient Masonic order, the Carbonari, yeah.
Garibaldi.
Garibaldi, yeah, the red shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was awesome.
That's
He let the Russians to capture him instead of him.
I have a question about number 29 about this. The family karma governs only with a nation where families have been kept pure and distinct, for in any nation where there is a mixture of family as obtains. In each Kali Yuga period, family karma is in general distributed over a nation. So I don't know, I don't understand that.
Where do you start reading? I'm sorry.
29.
It's kind of saying like that there's a lot of countries still where the tribe is still a very important part of like the nation, internal nation. But then there's also places like here where the tribe is kind of gone. The individual family units are just like one little kind of unit instead of,
Okay,
that's what I was kind of seeing. It's talking more so about like places where a lot of countries still in Africa and the Middle East, where they're still like, even the tribe's more important than their religion sometimes, like. I don't know. I just think of Rwanda, yeah, I don't know.
okay, that makes sense.
Well, there's also a certain amount of, you could say, family karma that happened in Europe from all the different kingdoms.
Yeah, the Tudors are a tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
But you couldn't just marry, you had to marry within the aristocracy. So they had it, whether it was from Germany or France and England, Spain.
Marie Antoinette was Austrian or German, wasn't she? Yeah. And got blamed for everything.
So you would call that family karma?
I think on a certain level, it would be the closest thing that we would have to recognize as family karma.
Yeah.
Maybe the Kennedys.
Yeah, like dynasties and stuff. We
Yeah.
don't have so much anymore in our like modern America, but I mean, probably in places like, Saudi, where the entire country is
Yeah.
named after one family. Definitely.
Like monarchies.
Yeah.
And the other aspect, I mean, some aspects are very, visual. I mean, like, depending on, like you already said, how families get this type of karma. But even like in that country, where we know each country has its own karma, we can see that very,
Yeah.
very well. Just like even in that country, we have the example of the families, that it's a different kind of karma, but within that, we see each country experiencing different karma than every other country. So I think that's 29 explains very well. Even the karma in your own family, it's a small family, and you can see the past of your your forefathers within your family only. That you still have, like you said, there's that tendency. Therefore, you can reincarnate with those families because that tendency, you've been following that tendency or nurturing it. But I guess as you begin to change that, well, you might be born in a different family or in a different country. But again, it's
So there is something too, like pattern or people that feel like they've been some sort of soldier many, many times because of karmic tendencies. It's just kind of keep kind of leading them that way.
Well, it
Or a
could,
military family,
it could be that. It also that they could be coming back as a karmic agent, whether they're aware of it or not,
That's cool.
because of their tendencies. It's like, if you think about, like Shiva, a big aspect of Shiva is destruction.
Yeah.
When we witness it, it's not good. But we don't know like what it's getting rid of or what it's setting up to change.
You gotta burn the field. That's
Yeah.
the whole,
There has to be an ending.
We were talking about that earlier.
We have to change, there has to be an ending. Yeah.
If for rebirth,
Yep. Yeah, nothing gets rebirthed without destruction.
yes, or dissolution, however you want to say it.
and destruction can be used as regeneration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the problem is when humans decide they're the ones that should cause
Yeah,
the
yeah.
destruction
Yeah.
of that generation based on their own ideas.
Personal,
Yeah.
desires.
And that's, we've witnessed that for
Then all
thousands
those
of
great.
years.
Big ego.
Yeah, like in the body, the bones, there's the part of the bones that are constantly breaking down and then building up.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that whole process
Wow.
with our bone makeup. That's a natural, that has to happen. If you kept just one side just breaking down or one building
Yeah.
up.
I've seen the math before that talks about, it says how long it takes a human body until every cell has been replaced. You're essentially a complete being.
Yeah,
7 years.
so-
Something like that, yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I mean, the
Secondary,
cells all regenerate, you know, all at different rates and like, but they all do.
Yeah,
So that aspect of the creator, sustainer, and the destroyer.
Destroy.
yes.
We can call it Brahma during Shiva, but we can see it as it was mentioned in the body. Down here,
Yes.
we can still see that.
Yeah.
and there's so many yogas where you're literally, I mean, imbuing something with the power of a destructive deity or something like that for that purpose. Like you never want to literally become that deity, but you do. There's meditations and yogas where you identify with these wrathful deities.
Yes.
And as you see the body is also, you know, the cells and neurons, they are destroying second to second, destroying and born a new
It's,
one.
it's always happening.
Yeah.
Creation, preservation, destruction, rebirth. Yeah.
So that's the idea of the illusion, Maya. You know, the body or the form is in constant change, motion. So that's why it's called like an illusion or Maya in Sanskrit.
Yeah.
And therefore, we see that what we experience through this form that is in constant change, then the idea that there is always something about that. There is the experiencer about that.
Witness.
You know, the witness. So anyway, that came to mind about that we're not being destroyed. You know, it's just the vehicle that we use for
Regeneration.
experiences.
Yeah, it's when you first, I remember as a kid, like in earth science or whatever, when you first start learning about decomposition and the worms and the bugs and like it's so disgusting and horrible. What a mess. Without decomposition, it'd be over
Nothing's gonna
quick.
grow.
Everything would be done.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, and they're seen as the lowest life forms and stuff.
They're
But
essential.
they're so way more essential than us, this planet.
This might seem like a weird question, but like karmically, I mean, we're talking about like family karma and these like purified families. Like I was thinking about like incest, like karmically, why, you know, is, you know, like a situation like incest, like
Royal family.
what would that like,
Big ones now.
but what, yeah, like, well, how does that play out karmically? You know, look, we know that it's taboo and it's not, you know,
Sure.
physically it can, you know, render humans that have definite, you know,
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
So
It's one of those things that's taboo almost genetically, where like
yeah.
you're repulsed by it for a reason.
yeah, but I
It's a
just
chemical
wonder,
reaction.
Yeah.
Where you
But-
feel weird. Yeah.
But at the same, yeah, it is. I mean, this is a really crazy subject because yeah, there's been. I mean,
why,
it's
what
also-
karmically would happen.
yeah, without.
Well, one of the karmic things that happen is there's mental illness.
Yeah, you get a bunch of despots if it's a royal family. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
Just a line of.
But I'm wondering like why that happens.
But you know what's interesting?
karmically.
Like animals, they do that, but they don't come out weird, right?
No, they do. Incest is terrible in animals too.
That's why
Animals have the same. Mammals have the exact same thing we do. They're repulsed by it.
Because I mean,
They
you
won't
get a
unless they
litter of
have to.
dogs. Sometimes a girl and a sister and brother dog will
Yeah, but
make babies.
I think yeah. Is it?
Do they come out weird?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you know, I'm not,
American Bulldog.
I know humans come out
All
weird.
the deformities that we think are traits in our fancy purebred dogs,
Yeah.
they're inbreeding. That's why an English Bulldog can't have natural birth anymore. They have to have C-sections because of mutations from inbreeding. That's what essentially.
But you know they've been doing this for years, though.
Yeah.
Like the son will impregnate the mom sometimes. I mean, it's
but that's where a lot of their,
Deformities.
deformities come, or they get illnesses that they wouldn't normally have. That's why, you know, if you take the 101 and go out to Ventura, they're building an animal bridge because the mountain lions that live in the Santa Monica Mountains have become, their genetic gene pool is gotten so
Really?
that they're gonna eventually
It won't last. Yeah, yeah.
die out. So they're building that multi-million-dollar animal bridge
Yeah.
so that they can go over to the other side of the freeway,
Hmm.
because the big cats, they go like 300 miles
Yeah,
from where their home is to spread out and find other
well, even
non-family members.
in anthropology, it's something like 26 individuals. It would take 26 individuals of varied genetics to sustain a new population. The idea of 2 individuals washing up somewhere and starting, it's impossible. They wouldn't be able to reproduce after like 2 generations.
There wasn't just one Adam and Eve, there was a whole
Yeah, there must
lot
have been a
of
bunch.
Adam and Eve.
But that's why it's too, like, that's why anthropology is so fascinating. It's because it used to be like, oh yeah, some boat must have got lost and ended up in Polynesia and they just made a new, no, it has to have been on purpose. You had to have enough individuals,
Yeah,
enough supplies, like,
yeah,
it wasn't just a lost fishing boat.
just a couple people.
Yeah.
That is an interesting, weird question.
Yeah, that is a pretty weird one. Good job. We like this.
You want to finish the, what do we have, one more?
2 more.
One more?
Fish?
Yeah. Karma operates to produce cataclysms of nature by
Speaking of.
concatenation through the mental and astral planes of victim. A cataclysm may be traced to an immediate physical cause such as internal fire and atmospheric disturbance, but these have been brought on by the disturbance created through the dynamic power of human thought. Egos, I guess that answered my question.
There's still a lot to unpack there too.
Egos who have no karmic connection with a portion of the globe where a cataclysm is coming on are kept without the latter's operation in 2 ways. A, by repulsion acting in their inner nature, and B, by being called and warned by those who watch the progress of the world.
That's super interesting. So like, if you were in a part of the globe or a part of time or a culture where all of a sudden everybody decided to be cannibals, but that wasn't your karma and you weren't part of that karma, you might be repulsed acting on an inner nature or even be warned by like an adept or just a message.
Yeah, if you look historically at Europe, there was Saint Germain,
Mhm.
who was like, he could attend all the different courts,
Mhm.
kings and queens of all the different countries. And he had certain amount of magic powers. That's why they let him in
Yeah.
to the private parties.
Jewels.
And his whole thing was going to trying to convince them to be more lenient and more compassionate to the people in their country.
Or the guillotines are gonna come.
And
They came.
that was the thing. He was trying to change their mindset so that the whole of their kingdoms wouldn't revolt against them and there would be this bloodbath.
Just
But they didn't listen to that. They were more interested in his, ability to perform magic.
not his actual like message. Yeah, I mean, because look what just a little while later happened in France and Russia right before World War I. It was just the blood of nobility.
And that's happened many times.
I mean,
Whenever the
emperors' reigns are like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Roman emperors.
whenever the people in power and the wealthy get to such a far extent from the everyday people, then that's what can happen.
Mhm.
People will tolerate really horrendous conditions until they don't,
Yeah.
and then it changes really quickly.
And that's the thing, it's like, I think a lot of the message here for me is like, can we be the generation or the people to right the ship before cataclysm hits? Because historically speaking, there's not a lot of precedence for a society or a culture that rights itself until they're fighting in the streets for bread, like usually that's what it takes.
Yeah.
And
Or a big cataclysm like Pompeii.
and could the US or even just our culture or even something like that be the first historical precedent to be like, hey, this doesn't look good, and right the ship without, a world war or something? Because people will you know, compliment Western Europe on like all the social services they have and everything. And it's like, well, yeah, World War II destroyed everything.
Right.
They built that because it was gone. They run radio and education and stuff because they had the power after everything was gone. Like it took the destruction of Europe for a lot of that, these awesome social systems.
Yeah.
And we didn't experience that destruction. And so our backlash wasn't, ours was the opposite. It's more capitalism after World War II, because we saw what our industry could do, you
I
know?
mean, the dollar, the currency to translate through.
Yeah,
Took advantage of the whole world doing that.
yeah, it's really.
That's gonna come back and hit us really hard.
Yeah,
Well, the thing is it just takes enough people, which isn't a large majority, but it takes enough to change the level of thought, so that becomes a priority. And that's the thing. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. Kelly brought up the idea about going to Mars. For some reason, that's a priority. No, it's not just a priority here. The Chinese are trying to go to Mars.
Japanese now.
Russia has their space program.
It's a space program.
You know, Japan is hooked onto it because of, so it's like, but why?
Yeah.
We haven't even solved the power issue.
You might find some frozen water. Right.
Frozen water in the desert.
I know.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, what could we do if we were putting all of our scientific power on Earth today into playing God, into fixing things here with the power of science and evolution and things like that? And like, what if we really did? That's the thing. Terraforming is not an impossible concept by any means. It's completely doable. It just, you know, takes a bunch of work. But like, you can turn the Sahara green. You could.
But you have these interests that are so, you know, not just capitalists, but turbo capitalists. I mean, they won't let up. You have to stop that first. The turbo capitalists have to be stopped first. They want to squeeze everything out. Like there's somebody who created an engine that could get 200 miles a gallon.
Oh yeah, all the time, yeah.
That was like in the 50s. I mean, and that's not to mention all the other technologies.
Right.
I mean, we could just stick with oil and just get 200 miles a gallon.
I think that's what's scary.
Ago.
What's scary is like when I was first introduced in like poli-sci or whatever, it's just the concept, the bare concept of capitalism.
Yeah.
Like everyone like knows capitalism left unfettered, kind of where we're getting.
Yes.
Leads to one guy, one business, and the rest of the world works for him. That is the end of capitalism.
Yes.
That's where it goes.
Yes. And it destroys
And
everything.
it essentially enslaves the whole population.
So if that is still
But we see that, we know the equation, you can see the math clear that leads to that, and we
Yeah.
just arrive at it.
if it continues to operate, none of this other stuff we're talking about will ever happen. You have to do something about
Well, it will happen
unregulated
because capitalism will destroy
You
itself
have to do,
eventually.
but you have to do something about unregulated capitalism to get to all this altruistic stuff. You can't get to any of that if unregulated capitalism is still in play.
But luckily, we have like these eons, and capitalism left unfettered would suck, but it would eventually defeat itself, like destroy itself as a
We're all
even
gonna be
concept.
wearing a diaper sooner or later.
I mean,
Well,
who knows?
we just went to
Did
the,
anybody think this decade would be like this? I mean,
we went to the karmic tendencies. So we can see as a whole, what is the tendency of humanity as a whole, the majority. So we can foresee what's coming up. I mean, what has happened in past civilization.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why the idea of the Theosophy is to kind of awaken minds
Yes.
to change, to help change those tendencies. Because, you know, the thinking is power.
Yeah.
So the more we think about, you know, the betterment for humanity,
Yeah.
you know, then slowly we can change those
We have to
tendencies.
penetrate the minds of the billionaires. That's what we have to do.
We don't really have to.
Not
We just-
really, 'cause it's not,
that's some rough, I think that's beyond even karma's.
yeah, I think that's the wrong way to go. The way to change people is to change average people.
Okay.
Absolutely.
If the average person, if the average person went to the store as opposed to shopping from Amazon,
Yeah.
they would change pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Because they have a lot of things in place to try to understand Why are not so many people shopping now? What happened?
Mhm.
I
But,
think that,
but that's the thing is like, you want your convenience.
Yeah.
So you rationalize, well, I don't like what they do, but it's easy, so I'm gonna get it. You could just as easily go to the grocery store, well, but I don't wanna spend gas, I'm using gas, so if I go to the grocery store, it's more, so I don't wanna do there.
Yeah,
Plus, I waste my time, so I don't wanna do there, but, so I'll deal with the Amazon and his evil and figure out something else to do. And that's the thing, as long as people are comfortable, they can tolerate a lot of things that they don't agree with
Mhm.
until you're not comfortable anymore, but then no one else is worried about you because they're worried about their comfort.
All right.
And that's the thing, it's like,
That's why we're
it's
not
very easy to,
screaming in the streets is because we're distracted or comfortable. It's like, if I go join this movement or whatever, I won't be able to just chill and watch a movie every night at home by myself or with my family or whatever, you know?
even if you don't join a movement, the way that you think, and we're in a capitalist society, so you really wanna vote? You vote every day the way you spend your money.
Mhm.
So if you wanna start changing things, don't spend your money in particular ways, or barely spend it. Be an ascetic and say, I'm not gonna spend my money.
I made a little change on number 30. Let me give you the changes. Karma operates to produce a solution of nature by concerning to the mental and astral planes of being. A solution may be traced on immediate physical causes such as internal changes and atmospheric disturbance. By these have been through by the solution created through the dynamic power of human thought.
Yeah, it's nice.
I made the changes.
Yeah.
You know that the glass can be half.
No, it's exactly what we said.
Yeah,
You're totally exhibiting why we're all about non-dualism, right? It's exactly it. That's great.
Yeah, if we don't solve it, nature does.
Yeah.
The problem is, we usually don't like how nature solves it for
Yeah.
us.
oh, nature's gonna solve it, but those guys at the top, they're gonna find a way to hide somewhere while nature destroys the rest of us.
Remember one of the final.
We're gonna go to
One
Mars.
of the final stand-up specials by George Carlin, he talks about that, about how like, you think we're gonna destroy the world? He's like, this planet's been through worse than us, and it's like, it'll just whip up some virus or something.
Yeah.
If we really start to threaten the actual planet, not just life on the planet,
Yeah.
but the planet itself.
John Lennon says,
Antibodies.
you think I am the only one? No.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
if we look at the last one, 31st, the opposite is true too. Speaking of what we're speaking, right? Because karma will get you sooner or later, either as a whole or as an individual. Because here it's talking about those that, maybe you're not supposed to die in certain, cataclysm, right? But the opposite is true. And this is just I have a friend that when in 1984, when we had that earthquake, I think it was in Whittier earthquake. I might be wrong with the year, but he got so scared and he started reading about a lot of things about California and Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah, all that
And
stuff.
so, died. So he flew out of here. Where he went, I don't remember if he went to Mexico. I'm not sure. He went to a different state. But he went there, and like in the next month, he experienced another earthquake.
No.
He brought it with him.
That's great.
So, it's your turn.
Yeah.
She's running away from that.
It's like, you don't belong in certain situations.
and then they kicked him out because he brought the California earthquake for Iowa, right?
Earthquakes in
That's
California.
California.
That's great.
Well, HPB in the Secret Doctrine, she's talked about the Atlanteans and how, certain ones left. That's why you have the Yucatans and you have, Alexandria,
There's traces still within
Traces.
humanity, yeah.
and they had to go and, start civilization with what they could there.
Well, I think it's amazing too. I think a crazy thing is we see how fast, I mean, you can see in like some of the Chinese big city developments that never really anybody moves into, or even like Chernobyl. We can now see how fast even our high and mighty advanced civilization would disappear, would be eaten up
Yeah.
by the planet. And so to this whole belief that we have that like, Egypt or something, or the Fertile Crescent was the first moment on this planet of like high, technology or achievement is insane. It's a million years ago, we have no trace of anything.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's all sort of crumbled.
Because it's not exactly long enough for a lot of stuff to be fossilized, but it's way long enough for everything to be beaten up.
And she even says, what was at the bottom of the sea is at the surface, and what at the surface will go to the bottom of the sea.
Well, it's like every year they find more statues and more pyramids in the Sahara, all constantly.
And they're finding stuff underwater.
Those dunes are.
And they're finding stuff underwater, and then they won't touch it because it might crumble.
Well, what's amazing? The Colossus of Rhodes. Where did that thing go? That's feet, but like that thing must have been like 70 feet tall, and they're nothing anywhere in the bay or the ocean around it. They've searched forever. Nothing.
The Martians took it.
Yeah, just flew away with it. Good class.
What's next week? Who's doing next week?
I mean, I guess I'll bounce back. I'm ready to bounce back to some history and stuff.
Okay.
And then whoever.
Are you gonna do something, Roberto?
No, I won't be here next Sunday. I have family.
I mean, are you gonna do something this month, at the end of the month, or do you have a
I
next?
think the following Sunday. You want-
Okay, cool. Yeah, I might do 2 in a row or just one. And I think also Chris wants to do another one pretty soon. So
Yes, okay.
then we'll kind of schedule the month out.
Let me know if Chris wants to do something. I can do it after him or before.
Cool.
We start studying Bhagavad-gitas at the
On
Tuesday
Tuesday.
class.
Cover what?
It's Bhagavad-gitas
Oh, good.
with the Spanish class on Tuesdays.
Misha, you have any parting words? Any questions? Masha? No?
It's
Okay.
all coming back to you. Just easy, right?
She's trying to say, what are they talking about?
Was it
Did you guys
understandable?
get the email announcement? I sent it out late.
Was it
Well,
understandable?
you got it though.
Was everything like understandable?
I'm just making sure.
I know it's hard to stay on track of that.
How did you
You
find
can
out
do it a
about the
couple
class?
days before.
Will-
Oh, I always
just-